CBS, America's #1 independent television network, presents the following sports exclusive.
Bristol's going to throw for it. Got to get it off. They go for the ball game. Touchdown! Touchdown! Urkavici sets, loads up, heaving one deep, and it is caught! Dylan Strong! Do you believe it?
Welcome to Basically a Football Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans, we're back! Season 4, Basically a Football Show, college football right around the corner. It's that time of year. I'm so excited. Technically, the season already started with the Cal-Hawaii fiasco over in Sydney, but you know, when you see the slate of games that you have coming up this weekend.
And what a slate. Jeez.
Oh, my God.
For an opening weekend, seriously, is this not the best one? I can't remember one being better than this.
No, I'm pretty sure I heard someone say this is the most ranked matchups in a first week of a season ever for college football. So
I don't doubt it because there are some incredibly good matchups coming up in week one.
It's got you really excited for the opening week. Let's start off with the team that won the college football championship last year. Team we're all pretty familiar with, right?
Right.
Team, you know, their dynasty is over. They keep dying. We're told that Alabama's dead. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Alabama is never dead.
No.
As long as Nick Saban is at the helm, the Alabama Crimson Tide will never be dead. The reigning national champions, they come in ranked #1 in the AP and coaches poll. They open up this weekend with USC in Dallas at Jerry Dome. USC ranked 20 in the AP poll, so a good ranked matchup there. You know, going into the season, there's no reason to say that Alabama's not the favorite again.
They are just amazing. I don't know how many times we've buried them over the 4 years of the show where we go, this is it, they're done, and they never are. And I think at this point, you just got to look at it and say, they're #1 until they're not anymore. Because that's the only way you can do it and make any sort of sense whatsoever. They're just that good. I was thinking about this today. How many guys that are like #2 or #3 on the depth chart at Alabama would start, not just on a lesser team, but like in the SEC even?
Oh,
like,
totally.
All the guys at #2 on their depth chart would probably be the starting lineup at Ole Miss.
Yeah, the guy that looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback for Florida was a walk-on at Alabama a couple of years ago. He transferred to Oregon State, didn't work out there, transferred to Florida. But he looks like he's going to be their starting quarterback. And he, you know, in Alabama, we talked about, or I mentioned at least, the quarterback thing. It doesn't matter who they pick. Like, all these guys are probably pretty equal when it comes to whatever their recruit star ranking. They're all blue-chip prospects. They may not be NFL caliber because I think we've talked about this on football shows of the past where – can you name the last good Alabama quarterback that made it to the NFL?
Ken Stabler?
Ken Stabler. Yeah. Joe Namath.
Namath.
The list isn't very deep. You have plenty of very good college quarterbacks, but they don't make it on. But it doesn't matter.
No, because their job isn't
going to do what he's going to do.
Right. His job is to win at Alabama. He doesn't care what they do in the NFL. I mean, I'm sure he thinks it's great if they go on to great careers in the NFL. That's not his job. And they just stack the talent. I was looking at the top 25 before we started, and football, for all the supposed parity and everything that people talk about in college and in the NFL, it really boils down to this. The more things change, the more they stay the same. You look at that top 5 from this year, it's not significantly different from last year or the year before.
No. Yeah.
And Alabama always at the very top. And this is why in 2014 when Ohio State beat them, I didn't care what happened after that. Because to me, knocking off Alabama, that is the notch that you want to put in your belt at any point. Mm-hmm. That to me legitimizes you as a football team if you can beat Alabama. They're just that good.
Yeah. They lose their defensive coordinator, Kirby Smart. He's now the head coach at Georgia, but Alabama's still got all the talent in the world on defense. Yeah. It's not like Nick Saban can't find a coach. I mean, Nick Saban is a defensive coach himself.
Right.
He can find somebody to make the system work the way he wants it to work.
He gave a speech today that Nick Saban did, or yesterday, whatever it was. I saw a headline today. Our dynasty isn't over; it's just beginning. And you want to go, what a pompous jackass, but you know what? He's probably right.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
Definitely not wrong. When it comes to challenging Alabama, I think it's got to be LSU if anybody's going to knock them off.
That's my thought.
LSU comes in, they're 5 in the AP poll, 6 in the coaches poll. They bring back Leonard Fournette, who was just a beast last year. Got injured a little bit and maybe overworked because it's still a question as to if LSU's going to have a throwing game or not. But Leonard Fournette's going to carry the ball 20 times a game and run it down your throat. Strong running back, strong defense. And if they can find a quarterback that can throw the ball downfield, I mean, they could provide some sort of challenge.
The thing with LSU, I think they certainly have the talent to challenge Alabama for that division for the SEC. And like you said, it boils down to one thing: if they can throw the ball. Because last year we saw what Fournette did to everybody else until they played Alabama. Mm-hmm. If they can find a way to throw the ball and everything else stays the way it should, if they can keep away from the injury bug and play up to their potential, they are the team in that conference that can knock off Alabama. But that's a lot of ifs. And again, it goes right down to the last thing. They've got to be able to find a way to move the ball through the air. If they can't do that, forget it. It's over.
And their game against Alabama is in Tuscaloosa this year. They have some tough road environments, but I think some of those teams that they have to play on the road aren't up to the caliber that we're used to seeing. LSU should win those games, and really their season should come down to the Alabama game.
I look at the SEC, and the team that I think that has the best shot at knocking off Alabama is LSU. I know people are pretty high on Tennessee this year. Mm-hmm. Tennessee may be on its way back, and that's great. The SEC is better when the traditional teams are competitive, and it's great to see Tennessee on the way back. But I don't think they're back enough or have been back long enough to really challenge for that conference yet. So I think it comes down to LSU and Alabama.
I think Tennessee will win the East and play Alabama again in the championship game. And that's the thing that is kind of interesting for Tennessee. They play Alabama twice. And last year, their defense was outstanding. Their offense is supposed to – they have some potential there. They have the ability to maybe knock off Alabama. I like Tennessee a whole lot. I think if there's a team that could surprise Alabama, it would be Tennessee.
Well, another team we haven't talked about, and we should probably cover them real quick, is Georgia.
Yeah.
Mark Richt is gone, and so now we finally get – yeah, and now we get to finally see – is it that he was just a bad coach? And because year after year, you hear about all this talent Georgia has. And I mean, how many times have we gone into the season where Georgia's ranked highly and they end up losing 3 or 4 games? Now we get to finally find out. Is it really that they're that good and they were poorly coached? Or have they been a mirage this whole time? So they're going to be interesting, too. Maybe the SEC is a little more balanced than I originally thought.
It's hard to say when it comes to the balance of it because Alabama weights things so far to one side.
Yeah.
And and LSU helps there. And, Tennessee's going to be a good challenger. Georgia's going to be okay. Florida is still going to have a great defense, but if they can find some offense, they're going to be a threat. But then you look at the rest of it, and Kentucky's bad. South Carolina's going to be bad. Missouri's going to be bad. Vanderbilt's going to be bad. You go over to the West, and Texas A&M could be good. Ole Miss has some potential too, but they have some questions on offense. And Mississippi State is probably going to be middle of the road, and Auburn's going to be pretty bad. Arkansas could be tough. The SEC is still a very tough gauntlet to run, but it is not nearly as overall balanced as in the past.
It's going to be, as always, I think the most interesting conference in college football. Mm-hmm. And you boil it down, you've got LSU can knock off Alabama in the West maybe. I like your idea with Tennessee too. They I don't know if they're quite there yet, but if they are, it could be very interesting. And after that, that's pretty much, somebody might knock them off, but I think at the end of the day, it's still Alabama.
Yeah. I think
theirs to lose.
For the entirety of the SEC, though, when you're looking at every single one of these teams, every note that I have written down, at least for the top teams in here, strong defense, good running, strong defense, good running game. This is going to be a physical-ass conference.
It always is.
There's not going to be a whole lot of air raid shootouts going on in the SEC. It's the same story in the SEC when it comes to the style of play, and it's the same at the top. I think Tennessee could challenge Alabama, but I think at the end of it all, like you said, Craig, you can't say Alabama's not number one until they're not number one. Until further notice, I'm going to go ahead and say Alabama will win the SEC, and Alabama will make it to the playoff.
I've learned my lesson in 3 years of doing this show. I am not going to pick against Alabama until they're dead. But to quote your buddy Chris Berman, this is why they play the games. We don't know what's going to happen until it actually happens, so you never know.
Moving away from the SEC, the number 2 team in both the polls, the runner-up from last year, the Clemson Tigers. Clemson probably played way above our expectations of a Clemson team. They didn't Clemson like they've been known to do.
That alone exceeded expectations.
Yeah, they were legitimately for a while the best team in the country.
Yeah,
legitimately they were right up there. I think they were number one for most of the time, and I could, for the first time in a while, you could clearly say, no, this isn't some mirage. Clemson is a really good football team, and they're going to be boosted again this year because Deshaun Watson comes back at quarterback. Their offense is going to be loaded. As it was a season ago. They're going to put up a whole ton of points. The defense is going to be very, very good. And then when it comes to the rest of the ACC, though, the ACC is going to come down to one game and one game alone. The Clemson-Florida State game.
This conference, the SEC, is tricky to figure out. This one's pretty easy.
Yeah.
This one's Clemson and Florida State and everybody else. I mean, and I think the unfortunate thing about the ACC is those teams are in the same division. Because I think it would be a lot better if they could kind of get on a collision course to play each other in the championship game, but that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, when you look at the other side, and North Carolina, they're going to be pretty good. They're ranked. They're not anything to shake a stick at.
Miami's a shell of what it once was. It's not anything anymore.
We don't have Duke to rely on anymore.
No, we sure don't.
The thing that works for both of these teams that didn't in a couple of years past, because of the agreement Notre Dame has with the ACC. They have to play a certain amount of ACC teams every year. Last year they had to play Clemson, and it was in that torrential downpour, and they were a 2-point conversion short of making that an upset win for Notre Dame. They don't have to play Notre Dame. Their schedule is easy, and that's why if these two teams don't go into that game, I think they play it like the second to last week of the season. If they don't both go into that game being 10-0, then somebody messed up. And they lost their shot at a playoff spot, probably.
Looking at Clemson's schedule, the only game I see that could be a potential slip-up for them, and I'm talking this would be a huge upset, I think, at this point in the season. They're at Boston College, and Boston College has got a very tough defense.
Yeah.
But, again, they're a team that can't score points. I think if, Clemson could lose to Boston College. I'm not saying they're going to. I would never bet that they're going to. But if they could find, if the weather conditions are bad – and the Boston College defense can shut down the offense, then it's possible. But other than that, they should be undefeated by the time they get to Florida State.
They also have a Thursday game at Georgia Tech in Week 4.
Yeah, I think Tech's not going to be very good at all this year.
It's one of those things where different timing could throw you off.
Yeah.
And then with Florida State, I think the only tough game they have, they're at Louisville in Week 3, and then they're at Miami in, Week 6. Potential trip-ups, but I still don't think they will be.
No.
So this is, it's we've done a lot of talking to say what we've, kind of repeated, is that this is a Florida State Clemson conference, and when those two teams play, it's going to be a hell of a football game. I don't know if one team really has the edge over the other. Maybe I give it to Clemson because of their success last year, and they have Deshaun Watson coming back. Maybe you give it to Florida State because it's a home game for them, and their defense is going to be improved, and they have the wide receiver talent.
Okay, looking at it for me with Clemson, the importance of having a quarterback coming back that knows what he's doing. That is such a huge advantage in college football. I think it's going to be a real hell of a matchup, and I have a lot more respect for Florida State this year than I did last year or the year before going into the season.
I'm going to give it to Clemson, I think, because I do like Deshaun Watson a lot. Kind of surprising to see Clemson start the season at number 2, but again, they got the returners and the talent, and they'll be right there. Before we move on to the other conferences, I think because they're, at this point, a spiritual ACC team, it'd be appropriate to bring in Notre Dame.
Sure.
They start off the season, they're 10 in the AP poll, 9 in the coaches poll. They had some very close losses last year that if they can get that 2-point conversion and end up beating Clemson, if they don't lose that late season game to Stanford, they are right there in that playoff contention. They probably get that playoff spot. The defense has some questions, but the offense is still going to be a juggernaut. And the other thing, their schedule is very beneficial to them. They only have 3 true road games at Texas, at NC State, and at USC late in the year. They get Michigan State at home. They get Stanford at home. Win the games they're supposed to win and beat the ranked teams on their schedule. There's no reason to say Notre Dame won't be back in the national conversation, although they finished up the season at USC, and that's very much an at Stanford situation of last season where they could be riding high looking for it, and SC could come up and knock them off.
I'm looking at their schedule. If they knock off Michigan State, Stanford, we'll give Miami, we'll call that a good win. Virginia Tech will call that a decent win, and USC. And if they're there at the end, they're in the conversation, definitely. I don't know that they're quite at the level of, say, the top 5 teams, but they're going to be pretty good.
The job that Brian Kelly has done at Notre Dame has been pretty damn good.
Yeah, it has.
Before he came in, Notre Dame was downright...
Well, they were a mess.
They were a mess. They were irrelevant. Who cared? Notre Dame was old-time college football. Nobody cared. Nobody was going to go. How are you going to recruit? They're never going to win again. And in his first or second year, they went to the national championship game, and they've gotten steady recruiting classes since. He's done a pretty good job at revitalizing this Notre Dame program and making them. They're always a national conversation because they're Notre Dame. They're back to being a factor when it comes to the national rankings or the national championship picture.
Definitely. And the thing, too, that I think makes it even a little more impressive is that despite what Paul Hornig complained about years ago, Notre Dame did not drop its academic standards to make football better or easier. So he's done this, kind of taking the same route Stanford's gotten, where it's like, look, we've got to get good players, and we've also got to get guys that are pretty smart academically because our standards are a little bit higher than, say, in Ohio State or Florida State or whatever. So I think that makes it even a little more impressive, the fact that he's been able to make them relevant and competitive again under those circumstances.
To the Midwest and the Big Ten, your neck of the woods, Greg. We'll start off with your Ohio State Buckeyes. They start off number 6 in the AP poll, number 5 in the coaches poll. It's hard to think of a team being a national championship contender after having 12 first-round picks leave the team in the NFL draft this season.
They're kind of Alabama Junior. They reload just like Alabama does,
and they reload like Alabama. But the thing that might be better for them overall, for the first time in 3 seasons or so, there was no quarterback controversy.
Thank God.
This is JT Barrett's football team, and JT Barrett is a very good quarterback. The offensive line is going to have some guys filling in, but again, a deep recruiting class. It'll just take a little bit for them to start gelling. They have a new defensive coordinator with Greg Schiano coming in. As ironically enough, their defensive coordinator went to go be the head coach at Rutgers. They have a couple of interesting games here. They're at Oklahoma in Week 3, which is going to be a very, very interesting game.
That will tell us a lot about both these teams, I think.
They're at Michigan State, and they host Michigan in the final 2 weeks of the season. That's a rough slate there at the end to go back-to-back with the 2 Michigan teams. But Ohio State, at this point, probably still the favorite in the Big Ten. A lot of people are pushing up Michigan. Michigan State's always going to be a contender, but Ohio State is the favorite for the Big Ten and a favorite to be one of the 4 playoff teams at this point, you would think.
With the Big Ten, I think with all conferences, when you come right down to it for the top teams, it comes down to your schedule, where you've got to play and who you get at home. Another game that don't go to sleep on with the Buckeyes in the schedule is at Penn State. I think Penn State's going to be a lot better this year. I don't know if they're going to be title contention good in the Big Ten, but they're going to be a lot better football team this year. That offense is going to be a lot better. So the Buckeyes, if they can get past those, Michigan at home, I'm not too worried about. I think they're the favorites, but just slightly. I like Michigan State an awful lot. And Michigan, people are up on them. I think they're going to be a lot better. Jim Harbaugh's a great coach. But to go back to what I said about the schedule, Michigan's got 3 very tough road games, and that's going to be the difference, I think.
Ohio State's going to be just as talented as ever. Urban Meyer's going to coach them up like he always does. He's going to have a scheme in place. The team's going to work well. I think it's a matter of not tripping up over themselves and really just finishing the games when it comes down to it, because you think of how they lost to Michigan State last year. It was a tight one late, and to move on to Michigan State a little bit here too. Michigan State's big wins last year were very tight. They kind of fell backwards into a win against Michigan. Did they ever? They beat Ohio State tight, and Michigan State is losing. They lose Connor Cook. They lose their top 2 wide receivers. They have some losses on the offensive line. It's kind of strange to see Michigan State so far up the standings, I think. They're 12 in the AP and 11 in the coaches because they've lost so much on offense, and their margin of error last year was so thin.
Yeah.
I mean, D'Antonio's always going to have them playing really good defense, but I don't know what to do with the Spartans offensively. I don't know if they can hang with Ohio State. I don't know if they can even hang with Michigan, because Michigan's defense is going to be good and their offense is growing under Jim Harbaugh.
Mark D'Antonio is such a good coach. They're a team that I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until they give me a reason not to. I think they'll be in the thick of it, but really, and despite what everybody may think about Michigan coming in this year, and they're going to be better, there's no question about it, it's still Ohio State's conference to lose.
And Michigan, the defense is going to be great. They have a lot of talent on defense, and that's been their calling card the last couple seasons, and that's going to be very good. On offense, they still, their quarterback, it looks like it's going to be this guy named Wilton Spate.
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh can coach up a quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, the evidence for Jim Harbaugh coaching quarterbacks is twofold. He coached Andrew Luck, who naturally talented, but also made him pretty damn good. For the other side of making a quarterback better than he actually is, let us not look too much farther than Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
Who was minutes away from winning a Super Bowl at one point and is now going to be second string to Blaine Gabbert. But Jim Harbaugh can coach up an offense. He can get that team moving. And, of course, I'd be remiss without mentioning Michigan's number one pass threat, tight end Jake Butt.
The unfortunately named Jake Butt, yes. He was a great player.
He could have played any other position, but a guy with the last name Butt has to be a tight end.
Right, and the thing, too, is that he's really good at it, so you're going to hear a lot about him.
Yeah, he's going to make the NFL as a tight end.
Yeah.
There's so many people who are so high on Michigan. They're 7 and 8 in the polls, respectively. But, man.
That road schedule is just brutal.
The road schedule is rough, and while they improved last year, it's just – I don't know if they're there quite yet.
I don't think they are either. I think a lot of this high ranking is because it's Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
And because of the job he's done so far. I would say they're a year, maybe even 2, away from really being a consistent team in the conversation every year, which is where they want to be, obviously. I don't think Michigan's going to be 4 or 5 losses bad, but I don't quite see them right there just yet. Now, they could be, but between the youth and the inexperience at quarterback and the 3 tough road games, I still think they're a 2 or 3 loss team at this point. And that's not because they're not good. It's just because they're just not quite at that level yet. Where Ohio State's been there, they just reload. Urban Meyer, maybe I'm going to sound like a homer for saying this. Maybe I am. I think he's a better coach than Jim Harbaugh. Maybe just by a little bit, but that's enough when all things being equal. So I'm with you. I don't think they're quite there yet, but they're going to be really good.
I think I'm right there with you. Michigan being probably a 2-loss team overall. They probably lose some game in the middle of the season that they're not supposed to. I think they'll beat Michigan State on the road, and I think they'll beat Iowa on the road. But I think they probably lose that game against Ohio State.
Iowa ranked in both polls this year.
I think that's still a carryover from last year. You saw what Iowa was once they finally played the consequence. And this year they don't get that advantage of playing nobody. They do have to play Michigan State.
They're good enough when you've got to play them on the road. They're good enough to knock off a good team. Will they? Who knows? But they're certainly capable.
You know what? I'm looking at their schedule now, and Michigan's the only ranked team on it. And they're the only team that it looks like is going to be ranked.
We might get another situation like we had last year, where Iowa's going to rack up the wins, and we're going to get this idea that they're better than they really are. How has Ohio State dodged Iowa for so many years now? I can't remember the last time we played them. I'm dead serious.
It's the way, though, that the Big Ten has kind of rearranged the divisions recently. I think that has something to do with it, just based on, because it was the legends and leaders, now they go east-west, and probably just in the way the Matrix worked out that they just haven't played them. But, yeah, that's kind of strange, huh?
Because that used to be kind of a fun game you look forward to. Iowa was pretty good back in the day, and they played them every year. And it's like, I don't remember the last time they played Iowa. Not that I care, but just curious why. It's got to be a scheduling quirk. It's probably something similar like what the NFL does, where you play – a division from the other conference, and it's just they just haven't worked their way into the rotation yet. Yeah,
I think you play just 2 teams from the other division, if I'm looking at the schedule. 2 or 3 teams.
Okay. So Iowa probably just hasn't fallen into the rotation yet. That's probably all it is.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll play him next year.
But real quick for me, I think that it's Ohio State. I still think Michigan State's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Michigan, tough road schedule, and if there's any surprises, a team that could step up and win a couple that they probably shouldn't, it's Penn State, but I like Ohio State to win the conference.
Yeah, I think for when it comes to playoff contention, it'll probably just be Michigan or Ohio State, depending on what they win. But yeah, that's the Big Ten, Ohio State's conference until we say otherwise. We'll move on to the conference that still will never employ defensive coordinators. The Big 12. Oklahoma won the conference last year. Oklahoma went to the playoff last year. Oklahoma got beat pretty bad by Clemson. Oklahoma's the favorite again this year. They're number 3 in both the polls. And for the life of me, I can't understand why they're number 3 in both the polls. I mean, they lost a lot on defense when it comes to returners. They still have a returning quarterback in Baker Mayfield. Samari Piron's a very good running back. Wide receiver's a very big question mark. TCU is the second highest ranked team, 13 and 14 in both polls. They have Kenny Hill, their quarterback, coming back from injury. The offense is going to score a ton of points. Oklahoma State, they're developing. They're going to score a ton of points. They have very good wide receivers. They're at 21 and 19 in the polls. And Baylor, despite all the nonsense they had to deal with this offseason, changing coaches and the scandals and whatnot, they're still going to score a whole ton of points on offense. And they still have Seth Russell comes back at quarterback. The O-line's going to have to gel. They're a new O-line. And again, like all these teams, the defense isn't great for Baylor, nor is it good for Oklahoma State, TCU, or Oklahoma. The problem with the Big 12 is that anybody could probably beat anybody because they can score 45 points a week.
You're going to get a lot of games where whoever has the ball on offense last is going to probably win the game. I'm looking at Oklahoma being ranked 3rd, and I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to look at the teams behind them. Florida State's better than Oklahoma, right?
Florida State beats them.
LSU beats them. Ohio State beats them. I think Michigan beats them. Stanford definitely beats them. Tennessee probably beats them. Notre Dame. Down to Ole Miss before I go. I like their chances.
I probably like their chances against maybe Ole Miss, but probably Michigan State at 12. Yeah.
And then you got TCU right there, who I think is more than capable of beating. I just don't understand how they can be ranked so highly. Only thing I can think of is that the people that are being polled look at it and go, they're going to rack up a lot of wins because of all the teams that score a lot of points. They're the best at scoring a lot of points, I guess. I don't know. I'd rank them at 12 best right now is where I'd have them.
You got TCU, you got Oklahoma. We mentioned Baylor. Texas is supposed to be improved. Texas Tech is going to score a bunch of points. Kansas State can always score. West Virginia can always score. It isn't until you get to Iowa State and Kansas where you say that the 9th and 10th teams of the Big 12 are actually bad. Even a lot of these projections, it's Kansas and Iowa State are 2 and 3 wins, and then you have a whole chunk of 6 and 6, 8 and 4, and you get the 10, 11, 12 at the top because you think Oklahoma's going to be the best of those teams and going to be beating them all, but it's not going to be easy. If Oklahoma, yes, they have some of the talent, they have the returning quarterback, they have the returning running back, they have the ability to win all of these games. I just don't know if they're going to.
I think that Oklahoma is our UCLA this year. They're a team that's just ranked entirely too high. If they score enough points and can just manage to hang on throughout the entire Big 12 schedule, sure. I don't see that happening, though.
Of the teams, if I had to pick ones who win the Big 12, I would say Oklahoma, but I don't think they're going to do it undefeated. They play at Houston here in week 1.
Yeah, and Houston's supposed to be pretty good. I've seen people talking about Houston being in the thick of the playoff hunt this year.
No, Houston's 15 in the country right now. They're probably they're as we stand, they're the best of the group of 5 teams. If they lose 2 of their first 3 games to Houston and Ohio State,
no, they're done.
They're not making a playoff.
No,
they might win the Big 12. They're not a lock to win. All these tight games.
No, like I said,
50-50 chances.
They are this season's UCLA. They are ranked at least 10 spots too high. At least. Maybe more. And
I think it's different in opposed from UCLA that they will probably still win the conference. But in terms of like the actual ranking number, definitely.
There's a lot of teams in that conference that can beat them. To me, I guess it's kind of fun football to watch once in a while. But when you're just not even bothering to play defense, you just leave too many variables out there. It's just too easy to lose when you've got no way to stop the other team. I don't care how good your offense is. And if you can't get the other team off the field, they're always in it. And that's the problem I have with Oklahoma and the Big 12 as a whole.
In this opening game against Houston for Oklahoma, based on some reports, by next season it could be a conference game. The Big 12, again, looking to finally get back to 12 teams.
Houston seems like a good fit, too.
It looks like Houston and Cincinnati are the front runners for those 2 spots. So, see how that turns out. But the Big 12 is just, you can get in depth on some of these guys and list off players, but they're all the same team to me at the top.
Basically.
They're teams that can throw the ball. And I think the thing that makes Oklahoma a little bit different is they have the stud running back to kind of complement the passing game. And maybe that's what separates them from the rest of the conference. But again, all these games are going to look like track meets. They're all going to be basketball scores every week. If we had to pick the team to win, I would say Oklahoma is going to be the champion, right?
I'm going to go with TCU.
Okay.
Because I think Oklahoma's ranked too highly. I think TCU, I think I would put those two maybe at 12, 13, right where they are. And I just think wait, does TCU do they play each other first off? And if so, where?
They get Oklahoma at home early.
Then I'm taking TCU to win the conference based on that alone.
One way or the other, I don't think the Big 12 gets into the playoff. I don't, because I think they're going to just kind of cross each other off the list by beating each other.
Yeah.
You're going to have to be undefeated if you want to make the playoff, and I don't see it happening.
The only thing I could see is what the Pac-12 does. Because you want to talk about a conference that just eats its young. There's the one right there.
And on to my neck of the woods, the Pac-12. I love me some Pac-12 football. It's going to be, I think for my money, maybe I'm a little biased on it, but the most entertaining week-to-week conference in college football. People could say that a lot about the SEC, but as we said, there's some dregs in that conference. But I think even the dregs of the Pac-12 can make some points. Stanford is the top-ranked team right now in the preseason polls. They're 8-7 in the AP and coaches. They return Christian McCaffrey, who's the most electric player in college football right now. They lose some big guys on the left side of that offensive line. They have a new quarterback coming in again, and their schedule is kind of tough. They host USC, but they're also at Notre Dame, at UCLA, at Washington, at Oregon, at Cal.
Ouch.
I think of the teams, Stanford is the most legitimate good team of them.
Right.
The rest are all kind of in the middle because there's just the hype on some of these schools. I just don't. I mean, I get it for a couple of them. I don't get it for Washington, who's the next highest ranked team in the Pac-12. They were 6-6 last year. They're 14 in the AP poll.
I want to say Sports Illustrated had them as high as maybe 7 or 8. Too.
Yeah,
people are all over this team.
I've seen people pick him for the playoff.
I think a lot of this is Chris Peterson. He's a great coach. We saw what he did at Boise, but come on. How many teams go from 6-6 to in the thick of the national championship chase in one season?
What everyone is really kind of hanging their hat on is that they return almost everyone.
Okay.
It's like people have there's this really dumb assertion in college football, and I see it in high school football too, where simply because a team returns players, they're going to be better because they're a year older. While, yes, in theory they learn more and they get bigger and stronger or whatever, if the players are still mediocre,
right?
They were 6-6. I think they're going to be better. But I think if you're any other 6-6 team in the country and you improve to 8-4, 9-3, that's a good year. But some people are picking Washington to lose just one or go undefeated, and I don't get it.
Okay, a lot of guys are returning. These same starters went 6-6 last year. Are they going to get that much better this year? I'm not saying they're not going to improve, but are they going to improve 5 games worth? I'd love to see it. I like the team, but I'm not buying it.
They're going to win their fair share of games. I just don't know if they're going to be, knocking off Stanford and USC, and knocking off everybody, winning the conference. I don't see that. This hype train just won't ever stop, will it? With this UCLA freaking Bruins team. The thing that I think is hilarious is the media. Of course, they love UCLA. They always do. They're 16 in the AP poll. The coaches have them 24th because the coaches have seen UCLA play and they know what UCLA is. Yes, they had a lot of injuries last year, especially on defense. Yes, Josh Rosen was a true freshman quarterback and he comes back. But who is he going to throw the ball to? Some questions at wide receiver. They're replacing guys on the offensive line. And I still think UCLA is a middle-of-the-road team, man. They're going to lose at least 3 games.
That's my thinking, too. A really great season for them would be like a 10-2. But I see them more as a 9-3, 8-4, and if a couple breaks go against them, 7-5. I like them better at 16-24 than I liked them the past couple years when they were way up in the top 10.
Sure.
But that conference and their talent level, I think they're going to be a good team, but I think it's Stanford's conference to lose at this point. Mm-hmm. And I don't see UCLA as being a serious threat to that. Maybe they will be. Maybe this is the year.
You got USC on the up and up, too. Clay Hilton is the new head coach, who also has the distinction of being a 2-time interim coach for the Trojans. They open up with Alabama. Great for them for scheduling it. They're probably not going to win. They go on the road to Stanford in week 3. Their final 4 games of the year go like this. At Washington, at UCLA, home against Oregon, home against Notre Dame. Not an easy way to finish up for the Trojans.
Not so much, no. Pac-12, it's so competitive. That's what's great about it. Stanford, I guess, stands out a little bit, but then I look at it, I go, USC gets a couple breaks that go their way. If they arrive a little bit early, they could do it. I don't think UCLA will, but they might have enough talent to be capable of it. Maybe this Washington thing's legit. And when you get to the end of the day, the team that's left standing out of that, you almost think you've got to put them in the playoff, but they get there with 3 losses before it's all said and done.
I said the same thing last year. It's great as a fan, but when it comes to national prominence, you're going to take yourself out of the competition. And the last ranked team for the Pac-12 is Oregon. They're 24-22.
Do you think that they're starting to come down the other side of the hill after the Chip Kelly years?
I think they're settling into what they usually are going to be.
Okay.
Every so often, they're going to have a string where they're going to get all the talent and they can compete at the top. But I think at their lowest point, this is what they're going to be. They're going to be 24-22. They're going to be good. They'll be competitive in the Pac-12. Oregon's still going to be Oregon in certain facets, but they're not going to be at the top. But this is still a team that could beat Stanford like they did last year.
Right.
They could beat USC. They could beat Washington. It's going to be one of those things that kind of makes the Pac-12 a big soup of competitive teams.
Looking at the divisions, I'd take Stanford. I would love for Washington to be as good as people think they're going to be, but I just don't see it. Mm-hmm. And then, you got USC, UCLA, and probably Utah out of the other division. Just looking at it right now, early on, I think it's USC and Stanford probably. But you look at that, though, and you see a few teams there that you go, well, if UCLA could rise up, maybe. Utah might get a couple breaks. It's a crazy conference. It's a tough one to call.
Stanford, Washington, Oregon, UCLA, USC. They're all capable of winning their respective divisions and maybe winning the conference.
So who do we like? Are we going with Stanford?
Yeah, I'll go Stanford out of the north, USC out of the south with Stanford. Part of me wants to say USC, but no, I'll stay Stanford. I'll go safe and pick the Cardinal to win the Pac-12 again.
Me too. I'm going to go that route too, but yeah, I'm not gonna make some bold prediction because I'll just look like an idiot in 5 weeks. I'm going to go with Stanford too.
I think Stanford is the prohibitive favorite right now among the bloodbath that is going to be the Pac-12.
I know, but it's going to be great. Like you said, as a football fan, you'll love it. But if you want one of those teams to be in the running for the national championship, it's a gauntlet to get through.
And that's our season preview. We picked you some conference champions, went through all the big teams, went through the rankings. Big slate of college football coming up this weekend. Saturday is just going to be a hell of a day.
Best start to a college football season ever, I think.
We'll talk all about it next week, as well as preview the National Football League. This has been basically a football show, season preview for the NCAA. I'm Zach. That was Greg. We will talk to you next week. Enjoy this first weekend of college football.